Let's reverse engineer a classic cinnamon roll from Cinnabon together. We're in luck because these are sold in stores. They have to list the full ingredients and not just the allergens. Combining my knowledge of baking and FDA laws, this tells me everything that I need to know. We start by blooming our yeast with warm water and sugar, not milk. Anybody who tells you to use milk is playing in your face. I could not find my paddle attachment to save my life, so I'm going to use the dough hook for this entire process, but I've survived bigger tragedies in my life. It's going to be okay. For the dry ingredients, they use a mixture of all-purpose flour, potato flour, and salt. I'm going to whisk that really well while the yeast continues to bloom. Then I'm going to add my softened margarine into my bloomed yeast. Then I retrieve 2 eggs from my refrigerated safety deposit box down at the bank. My poor little dough hook is going to try and fail to incorporate these ingredients, but onward and upward. I'm going to add in my flour mixture slowly but surely, and then I'm going to let the dough hook do its job. This is actually what the dough hook is for, and now it's time to shine. I worked the flour in about 4 installments. You don't want to just dump it all in at once. You will not end up with a smooth dough that way. Cinnabon uses a lot of additives like stabilizers and emulsifiers that I will not be using in this first attempt. They are sold in bulk and it would be cost prohibitive not only for me but anybody who's interested in recreating the recipe. After the dough is kneaded for a few minutes, I form it into a ball and then I put it into an oiled bowl. I cover it with oiled plastic wrap and then I let it rise in a warm place. After the rise, I punch it down and then I turn it out into a floured work surface. I make sure the dough gets flour on both sides and then I roll it out with my floured rolling pin. After I get it rolled out, I will slather it all in margarine. Anybody who tells you to use butter is playing in your face. Cinnabon uses margarine. Cinnabon uses a proprietary margarine. I cross-referenced about 30 different brands of margarine to see if I could find an exact ingredient match, and I came up short. The closest one I could find is the Parquet margarine sticks. Not the Parquet in the bottle, but the Parquet margarine sticks. For the filling, they also use brown sugar. They try to trip you up in the ingredients list by listing plain sugar and listing sugarcane molasses, but when you combine those 2 ingredients together, it's brown sugar. Cinnabon uses a proprietary variety of cinnamon that grows in Sri Lanka and certain parts of Indonesia. Their specific cultivar is called Makara, but the same variety as cinnamon goes by the names I listed on the screen. They mix the 2 together before sprinkling it on top of the cinnamon rolls. They pour this mixture on pretty heavy before rolling it up. And spoiler alert, I will probably try a different brand of cinnamon next time. This one was so delicious, but it had a bit of a spicier finish. When I'm reverse engineering a recipe, delicious simply is not good enough. It has to be indistinguishable. That's the goal. When rolling these up, I try to keep them nice and tight and keep them even and not let it veer off to the left or to the right, just straight back as much as possible. Once I get it rolled up, I try to get it as smooth as possible by pushing in the ends and kind of forming the log to make sure everything is nice and even as much as possible. I cut off the ends for uniformity and then I use my bench scraper that has a ruler on it to make sure that I get each and every cinnamon roll the exact same width. Some people use unscented dental floss to cut these to avoid them getting smushed, but meh, ain't nobody got time for that. I'll just reshape them after I cut them. After I'm done cutting them, I transfer them to a baking sheet and I turn them on their side. Then I take a little time to reshape each one. I decided to add in the discarded pieces from the ends in the middle to avoid food waste, and that decision will come back to bite me in the butt. After I get them all arranged on my baking sheet, I cover it with plastic wrap and let it do its second rise. After it's done rising, I go ahead and put it in the oven. While that bakes, I make my frosting, which I knew was gonna fail from the jump because someone accidentally grabbed diet cream cheese instead of regular. But one thing about the show is that it must go on. Cinnabon adds a cornstarch slurry to their frosting, which is most irregular, but they do it and so will I. I add in vanilla extract and the cornstarch slurry, and of course a mountain of powdered sugar in 2 increments. This frosting came out so good, but since we used diet cream cheese, it's not on point, so I will be trying this again. And as you can see, the cinnamon rolls are done and they did come out a little bit uneven. They're quite brown on the outside and quite light in the middle. I know adding those end pieces in the middle really messed me up, but I think there's something else going on too. I'm gonna have to do some research. Even with the hiccups, these came out absolutely delicious, but absolutely delicious is not the goal. Indistinguishable is. Let me know what other dishes you would like to see reverse engineered in the comments, and make sure you're following so that you can see the perfected recipe.